Welcome to the Evolve Podcast, a podcast about disrupting your life to spark new evolution. Evolve your body, evolve your mind, evolve your soul, and evolve your tribe. And now it's time to disrupt.
Morning, Miles.
Dr. Cutler.
How are you?
I am good. I am good. It
You
is.
looking you looking especially dapper today. I'm liking the
Oh, thank
shirt.
you. Well, this is a last ditch effort. I wish I could say I consciously did that, but I was kind of rumming around going like, wait, it's almost time. And I just snatched something out of the closet and put it on. So it's nothing planned. I was just like outside. It's gorgeous outside. Finally.
Is it?
Finally. It's
We got the
gorgeous.
opposite of that here. I mean, it's beautiful, don't get me wrong, but it's snowing and raining in Utah.
Well, it's about 75, almost 80 here in Ohio.
Wow.
So, and
You
I
got your
mean,
you got
we,
your button-down shirt on. You're gonna but today's a soccer day for you, isn't it? Aren't you going out
yeah,
to watch Tiago play soccer?
yeah, as soon as we finish, I'm gonna strip this off, put on something, a t-shirt and some shorts, and drive. I think I'm about an hour away from his soccer field.
Nice. And he just had his birthday a couple days ago, right?
His birthday was yesterday. He is officially 14 years old.
Wow. How does that feel? You got a 14-year-old.
Feels awesome. Like last night, we went to one of those Brazilian churrasco style restaurants with the medallion. You know, you put the medallion
Oh
on
yeah.
green, and they keep coming over and slicing meat, and then you turn it over red when you had no more. And then
Is there a red
I had a
side? I've never seen the red side. I just kept it on green until they rolled me out there. I didn't know there was a red side.
and then I had a passion fruit caipirinha.
What's that?
You know
What's a
what a
cop?
caipirinha is, right?
No, no. What is that?
You've never had. So a caipirinha is simplistically put, it's like a Brazilian margarita, but it's made with this liquor called cachaça,
Okay.
which is this pressing of sugar cane. It's
Oh
really potent,
wow. Okay.
and they normally make it with lemon or lime, and but at this place they had a bunch of different fruits that they could make it with, so I chose passion fruit, and it was awesome.
That sounds amazing. I've
Yeah.
never seen sugarcane pressed until about a week ago. We were in
Oh, really?
Maui and we stopped off. We'd gone on a hike to up to a couple of waterfalls. We come back down and there's a little shack there where you can buy food. And one of the things that they said that they do with the smoothies that they buy, fresh fruit, right? So you've got pineapples from the island, you've got mangoes
Right.
from the island. I think I ate more fruit in that week than I've had in the last year.
Oh, that's
But
right. You in Hawaii?
we
I forgot.
watched the this press out the fresh sugar cane. What a fascinating thing to see. The
Yeah.
flavor on it was unbelievable. I mean, there's so much food that plays such a big role in our lives if we do it well, and
Oh, yeah.
an amazing flavor, amazing taste with the right food when you watch it done the right way. It's and I feel like that. Don't you get this feeling? Because I know you love to cook that when you're in the kitchen and you have great ingredients, you have fresh ingredients, that you can just
Yeah.
play with it so much better.
Yeah. Yeah. I told you before, sometimes when I start to get mildly hungry, I tend less to think about food and I start to think about color and
Right,
design of the plate.
right.
So I'm sitting there, I'm hungry, and like I said, if I'm starving, obviously I'm going food first. But if I get mildly hungry, I start thinking, colors, red, yellow, some orange, mix some green in that. What type of plate? And then I think of the food.
And you can play with it from there. And I think that's part of
Yeah.
what makes playing around in the kitchen or with anything else so enjoyable. And far too
Yeah.
often in life, I think we get away from playing with things as we get older. We get to the point where we think everything has to be rigid, and we have responsibilities, we have jobs, we have kids, we've got meetings we have to go to, but we get away from this concept of play. And I know you know, but we are really fortunate today. We've got Kelly Owen, who is currently working on her PhD, and she is studying play therapy. So we're going to be talking about play today. I know one of the things that you introduced me to years ago, you have this phrase, and people who listen to our podcast, they hear it all the time from you, and I've adopted it. In fact, I don't know if I've told you this, Miles, but every once in a while, Danielle will just look at me. She's like, "Okay, thanks, Miles." When I say, "Oh yeah, let's play with that idea for a second," she knows that that comes from you. And with that, folks, we want to welcome you to another episode of the Evolve Podcast. Joining us from Oberlin, Ohio, is the most interesting man that I know, W. Miles Riley. Welcome, Miles.
Glad to be here, Steve, and glad to have Kelly Owen with us.
Yes, sir. And in the mountains of Utah, I am Steve Cutler. Kelly Owen, who's joining us today, was born and raised in Georgia and considers herself a Georgia peach through and through. Following her mother's, sisters, and aunt's footsteps, she earned a bachelor's and master's degree in behavioral and learning disabilities. After teaching special education and then general education for 10 years, Kelly says, I decided to stay home with my children. My husband, and Miles, I don't know if you've read this bio, but this part is really cool. I mean, the whole thing's cool, but this got me. My husband, a Blackhawk helicopter pilot, how badass is that? Was
Yeah, that's pretty
deployed
badass.
to Iraq as we welcomed our third daughter into the family. A few years later, we were surprised to welcome a little boy into our family as well. Kelly says, I loved every minute of staying home with my children for 8 years. As my son grew older, I began to feel a strong desire to go back to school again. Because let's face it, a bachelor's and a master's isn't just enough, right, Kelly? I've always loved the process of learning, Kelly continues, and believe with every fiber of my being that I was called to further my education so I could learn how to effectively help children to find happiness and hope. Kelly says, I decided to follow my heart and go back to school to become a school counselor. A couple of months into my master's degree, I was unexpectedly offered a highly coveted position as a school counselor at an amazing school near my home, and I started a career as a school counselor before I even graduated. In addition to taking courses for counseling, Kelly took additional classes and assessments to become a licensed professional counselor and a nationally certified counselor. While finishing up her master's degree, she began her PhD in professional counseling and supervision at the University of Georgia. Upon graduation of her master's degree in counseling, Kelly was unexpectedly awarded the Outstanding Future Counselor Award. Currently, Kelly is a counselor at an elementary school, a licensed counselor, and working towards her license as a play therapist. She's a doctoral candidate, currently working on her dissertation, and hopes to graduate in August of 2022 after more than 5 years in graduate school. Counselor on the run, Kelly Owen, welcome to the Evolve podcast. We are so excited to have you.
Thank you
Yep.
so much for having me. That's quite the introduction.
That's quite the life.
No, I'm really not that important, but it makes me sound very important. Thank you.
Oh, just stop it. Just stop it. There we go. All right, let's wait. This is the no BS podcast, so don't the
You
humble like
just
I'm not
hit a
important.
pain point for Miles. He's going to go off right now. So just prep
Well, you know
yourself,
what?
Kara.
Wait. I'm going to tell you why I did that. Because while you were reading Kelly's bio, I've been thinking about because I really want to ask her this question seriously
All
Okay.
right.
because I've noticed we've had a couple of women on who, along with my, I hate to admit this, two ex-wives, but all these women who started a career, had a certain type of life, stopped, and then went back in
Mhm.
and came out more fierce.
Right. Right.
Both my ex-wives, well, my first ex-wife, I met her in college. She was a straight A student, everything like we got married, did some things, got out, and then she got sick. She had cancer, beat cancer, then went back in
Wow.
to get her master's. Second wife didn't get sick, but same thing, got her bachelor's, went out into the world, did some things, and decided to get a master's, which is how Steve and I met, because that's what brought us to Utah.
Oh,
But
wow.
got a master's in Utah, and a bunch of women I know who it's almost like a certain paradigm. And I would love for you to speak to that. So that's why when you said, oh, humbly, I'm not that important, BS. You are important.
Well, I think it is an important question because, you know, a lot of people, when they get to a certain age, they say, well, oh, I can't do that. I'm too old for this.
Yeah,
And there is
yeah,
there is a string of people. You know, we recently talked to Nicole Johnson on the podcast,
that's
who
right. Yeah, that's right.
went back and got a couple of master's degrees, and now we're talking to Kelly. And Kelly, I think that's probably a great starting point. You know, what talk about this growth mindset that you've developed to continue to grow and to become educated in your late 20s, right? Did we get that
Yeah.
correct? Yeah,
I
thank
mean,
you.
that's it's fascinating to sit and reflect on, oh, I guess I did do that, didn't I? Because when you're in the process and in the moment, you're not really thinking through,
Right.
you
You
know,
can't see it.
that you don't have that perspective. No, I grew up with a single mom who, when my parents divorced, there is no shame in being divorced, by the way, Miles. Like that is, you know, it's always a good thing. Not always, but my parents divorced and I lived with a single mom, and I watched her get back up on her feet and go back to school, and she got her master's, and she was just loved it. She loved learning. And I remember as a kid watching her study. And this was like in the 80s, late 80s, early 90s. So like she had a word processor,
Wow.
no Google access. She literally had to go to the library and make hard copies for her research, but she loved it. And I always knew in the back of my mind, she received a master's and then a specialist, and she was tired because she was a single mom, so she never got her doctorate, but she always regretted it. And so even from a young age, I always knew, I'm like, don't worry, mom, I'll get my doctorate. Like I always knew I was going to at some point in time in my heart. It was just life happens. And before you know it, you have 4 kids and you're a stay-at-home mom. And I loved every minute of staying home with them. And it's interesting that you asked that question, because I was reflecting back. I was running this morning and thinking about 5 years ago, like I was a very different person. And for me personally, and I remember the moment vividly when I decided to go back to school. It is like a changing point in my life. And it's funny because it's a very small moment. Nothing significant happened, but it's a very small moment that I remember.
But isn't that how a lot of them are? Like, I mean, you think about it, far too often we glamorize these epiphany moments, and we think that they're going to look like, you know, coming down from heaven to tell us to go in a certain direction.
It's
And
always
that's
the
not,
small moments.
yeah, it's those small moments. You wake up and you're like, oh, I'm stupid. I need to change. Or, oh, that's probably a good idea if I do this. I've had so many of those in my life, and I think to myself, but how often do we pick up on those things? So tell our listeners about this small moment. What
So
did that look like for you?
um I went into honestly, I was very social in high school. I did have straight A's, but I could have cared less about my motivation was being with friends, and was not very motivated in high school. I went to college because that was what was expected, and I just went where my best friend went because it seemed fun. And I was like, I didn't know what to do. I was like, I guess I'll just be, you know, a teacher like my mom. And I knew in my heart it was never like my passion. Especially, I loved children, but there was something missing. And in the middle of my master's for special education, I tried to switch over to counseling, but I was too far deep and I would have had to start all the way over. And at this time I was expecting our first child, so I just stuck with it. But and I'm saying that just to say I always have known I wanted to help children to be happy. And I say that to bring us back to your first question, Miles. How did I know, or what happened? What was my changing point? At this point, I was a stay-at-home mom, 4 children. I was toying with the idea of going back to school. At this point, I had been a stay-at-home mom for 8 years. And everybody that I throw the idea out to, they're like, yeah, but you just think, who's going to watch your kids? How are you going to do this? You have to take the GRE. That's $400. You have to take the practice course, and that's $500. Like all the little, when I started to overthink all the little things I had to do, and like the application fees and this school and that school, it was daunting and overwhelming. And I just put it off, put it off, put it off. Until I had a moment where, I wanted to go, but I just kept putting it off because it was overwhelming. There was this one day that my son was 3. My older kids were at school, and I was just at home with my little 3-year-old. And I just felt, I remember just kind of laying on the couch, and he was watching cartoons, and I wanted something more. I just felt like, I just wanted something more for me. And I just had this epiphany. It was actually a very personal experience that I haven't told anyone except my husband about, because you would probably think it was silly anyway. But I truly had this life-changing moment, epiphany, where I knew in my gut and in my soul, the time was like today.
Wow.
And I literally got off the couch, went straight to my laptop, and signed up for the GRE. And I started searching it for local universities for programs and counseling. And I did it that day. I just did it. So
was that the moment?
Go,
no, you go ahead. You finish. This is your story. You go ahead and finish.
I think I'm done. I had to stop overthinking all the little stressors and just take I had to take the first step. And since I did that, it's like all these doors just started opening and everything fell in my lap.
So it's like a moment like this, because I have these often, and it sounded like the moment of clarity when everything becomes clear. Like, you said 3 kids are out at school, 1 kid is watching television, you're sitting there, you've given and still continue to give your all, but you're giving outside of yourself. And it's like, what do I give to me now? And all of a sudden, this one moment, it just opens up and you see it clearly. And then all of a sudden, you realize, I gotta move. I gotta move. After seeing this, I gotta move and take advantage of this clearing that says, go do you.
Absolutely. And it's hard to put into words how strong it felt, the feeling.
Yeah.
And it's an undeniable feeling that this is it, I'm doing it now. And I didn't know, I had been out of school for a long time, and I was 100% in mom mode. It was very overwhelming, and I felt very inadequate. I felt like I had, even after that point, like I paid the $400 to take this test, and the math question, I had not been in school in like 15 years. I did not remember all the calculus and trigonometry. Like my brain had not touched that since high school. I do remember feeling very inadequate. And it's funny because looking back after taking the GRE, I would call my mom and cry and say, I failed. And then a few weeks later, I passed. And then I interviewed at different colleges. And after each interview, or universities, and after each interview, I would call my mom crying, I failed. There's no way. And then they'd call me and offer me, admission into their program. And it's funny how we have so much self-doubt when, but you got to take the courage to just take that step.
Yeah, but it's not just self-doubt, is it? It's I think there's commonalities in what you're talking about with your story here, that as soon as we make a decision that we're going to go in a different direction in life, or as soon as we start to get this intonation that we want to move in a different direction, it's very well-meaning, I think. I don't think that we have human beings in our life that are trying to tear us down, but it's very common for them to just get comfortable with who we are. So the initial reaction is to come up with
that's a good point.
Oh, well, what about your kids? Or what about this? As if we haven't thought about those things, right? I think it's very well-meaning, but it's a horrible thing that we do to each other. All of us have that negative mindset and fear when some new direction comes up. And so we're going to have that internal talk, but then we also have some of that external. And I love how you talked about that you not only did you listen to that feeling when it came, but you moved quickly on that. It's such a key.
And I love that you said that, Steve, because the comments from people, not everybody, but there were a lot of comments from people in my circle that were made me feel horrible at the time. So I had somebody tell me, well, if you go back to work and back to school, you're going to get a divorce. And they told me, well, why would you do that to your kids? Or how are you going to be a good mom when you're doing all this? And I kept thinking, why can't I do it and be a good mom?
Right.
But I think for me, the moment those comments actually over time really bothered me.
Yeah,
and
they should.
It forced me to quit caring what other people thought, because I had that epiphany. I knew in my heart I was doing what I was supposed to be doing. And I quit caring. I don't care what they say about me going back to school or to work, because I'm doing what I know in my heart to do.
And
What a
secretly,
feeling, right?
and I truly believe this, secretly, when people do that, they're actually revealing more about themselves than they are about your situation.
100%.
Yes.
And there's
100%. Yeah.
I forgot what movie I was watching. Oh God, it'll come to me, but you'll recognize the situation. This two couples are going to dinner. They're waiting for the other ones to come. The other ones come, and then they quietly announce they're getting divorced. And the wife of the other couple is beyond disbelief. I can't believe you're getting a divorce. What is this? And she literally goes on and on. She doesn't want to go out to dinner with them. She's going on and on. And as the movie progresses, we find out that the woman who was complaining about the couple getting divorced secretly wanted to divorce her husband. And she and that's what triggered her to react. And I've learned since then that sometimes it's actually fun now. Like I no longer take it seriously, because I can listen to people. And the question I always ask is, when they're complaining about something or interrupting what I want to do and with their negativity, I always say, so you're really telling me about you in this? And that always gives them pause.
I love that.
A reflection. Yeah, it's definitely a reflection of the other person. I think that's an important piece. I'll tell you, in my life, I've had several people, as we've evolved and changed directions at times with different things. I've had the same experience. But I love what you said earlier, Kelly, when you said that at a certain point, you just decided you don't care anymore. And there is a freeing feeling. It's just so liberating to say, you know what, this is my life. It's not yours. What you're saying is revealing something about you. It's not about me. And you just start to take those steps forward. Talk a little bit more about the confidence that comes as soon as you make that decision to not care about what other people are thinking, and then step into your own true path of life.
Like you said, Steve, it is truly liberating to learn to just not care what people think, when you know that you're doing what is best for yourself,
right,
and for your family. And that's really all that matters. And it does, for me, I try to always think about, okay, before I make any decision, it's always, of course, I always put my family personally first and my heart first. And the beautiful thing is, and what has given me pure confidence, is that everything that I have done for me personally, in the past, going back to school, struggling, watching my kids, watching me struggle, has been an incredible blessing. And I had no idea that was going to be such a blessing. I mean, my educational journey has been such a bumpy road, highs and lows. And I didn't realize how, I always know, like, I always knew kids would watch us, but I didn't realize how influential my everyday actions would be on my children. From watching me make an F on an assignment And then I study like crazy to figure out what I missed. And then I actually got a B on the next assignment. So they've learned that like it's okay to fail, but it's what happens after you fail that makes the difference. And it's how you talk to yourself when you fail that makes the difference.
Yeah, they're learning from your example in that moment. There's no better way to teach them at
And
that
everybody
place, right?
fails. We
Right,
have to teach our kids how to fail.
right.
They're going to fail too. And they need to know how to talk to themselves when they fail, or how to get back up on their feet, take a deep breath, be sad, and then keep going.
Develop
So
the resilience, right?
yeah.
You
Right.
reminded me of something that happened. So my wife went through a similar path where
Really?
she got her bachelor's degree in fine art,
Oh
and
wow.
then when we had kids, she stayed home, had some part-time jobs here and there, but when our youngest started going to school at full time, I think it was kindergarten or maybe first grade, and she says, I don't know what to do with my life. And so we brainstormed a few ideas, and I said, well, look, you're great with people. You're almost like a savant level when it comes to remembering numbers. Why don't you look into finance? She said, I can't do that. I don't know anything about finance. I said, again, you're great with people and you can learn finance. So she dove in head first, got into this job, was fortunate to get a part-time job to kind of teach her how to get going. What we noticed though, we had the fear of like what's going to happen to the kids if mom and dad are not always available in the same way that we were before. And what was so cool is it just opened up so many different conversations that we had not expected. I remember one day that our second daughter came to us and you could tell she was struggling with something. And I said, Carly, what's going on? And she just broke down crying. And she said, I'm just so used to coming home and telling you guys all about my day. And now you're both busy with work. And that opened up this conversation around emotional intelligence and understanding your emotions and understanding what your need is. And that mom and dad haven't gone anywhere. We're still here. Now, maybe we just shift to talking at dinner or after dinner, or maybe it's 20 minutes later than what she normally was used to. But we came up with a different strategy, and that became so freeing. And each one of the kids have thrived watching my wife go through that. And so this reinvention of self really has a positive impact on the kids. What else have you noticed with your children as you've gone into the workforce and continue to educate yourself? Like what else are they getting from your example?
Well, a funny thing, when I study or write, which is a
Mm-hmm.
lot, I, I, for me personally, it has to be picked up. I cannot write or focus if my space is a mess. So everything is put away.
Yeah,
I always
I'm the
have
same way.
a candle burning and some type of instrumental music, like some instrumental. I love like instrumentals. So, but it's funny because at night when my kids are like doing homework or whatever, I will go in their rooms and they literally study the exact same way that I study. I've never
Wow,
once told them how to study. I
so
just
cool.
they
So
all
cool.
have they will have their candles and their music on, and their rooms will be, I won't say spotless, but
Cleaner
generally
than a
picked up. Right.
normal kid's room.
It's
Yeah.
funny just how they pick up on the little daily things. I do know, having limited, my time has opened up now because I'm ending. Next week is my last face-to-face class of my PhD, and after that it's writing only. So it's almost surreal because I have been in school face-to-face for 5 years, leaving twice a week or once
Wow.
a week. So next week it's the final end. We're going to celebrate. But what I have noticed is that since my time is limited with my kid, I have less time with them when I'm in school and writing. But man, I miss them so much.
Mm,
When I am with them, I just can't get enough of them. I
yeah.
want to be with them. I want to talk to them. When I'm going to the grocery store, I'm like, please come with me. I just miss you. Like, help me make dinner. I know, isn't that funny? But I wasn't like that before when I had tons of time with them. It was almost, I truly I appreciate my time with them now.
So you can take
And
it for granted
you
when
do,
it's all there. Yeah,
and you realize they don't stay home forever. And so,
right.
yeah.
What a
How
beautiful
old is your
perspective.
oldest?
I'm sorry, Miles, my oldest, I have a 16-year-old. So
Okay.
she is finishing up her sophomore year in high school.
Okay.
Um, I have a
So
14-year-old in 7th grade.
okay.
Oh my goodness, she might be 13, but she won't listen to this podcast. It's fine.
It's okay. I screw up my kids' ages all the time.
She'll
And
be
they
14 soon.
they never listen to the podcast.
Yeah, it's
I
fine.
could screw up their names and they wouldn't even know.
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah.
I have a 10-year-old in 5th grade, and then my son is 8 and he's 2nd grade. So
What a
Okay.
great way for them to learn. I think, seeing your example as you go through this. And, I love how this conversation has gone. This was not what we had originally talked about or planned of discussing your personal evolution in this way, but I love it because I think so many people, men, women, they need to hear this story of that. It doesn't matter where you're at right now. The future life that you want can be created. Age doesn't matter. Situation doesn't matter. It truly is about choice. It's about accountability. And it's about follow through and resilience. And that's what your story is all about. It is really fascinating.
thank
So
you.
Kelly, I do want to talk about what you're studying. As you mentioned, you're coming up on the final week of your classes. Why did you choose play therapy? What was it about play therapy that became so intriguing for you to study in your PhD?
You got those kids. The kids. That's all they do is play. You're like, what if this was like a graduate level course just playing? My kids.
But Miles, they have those. It's amazing. And in all honesty, like I really do love to have fun. I believe you will be most successful in whatever you're doing if you're having fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whether you are typing a paper or doing finance, if you're having fun, I mean, why not have fun? And you're going to be your most successful person when you really enjoy what you're doing. And so that to me really is where I'm like, play is so fun. And
So it kind of
everything,
matches up
and
with your personality and with your perspective in life then.
I love it. And when I'm
Yeah,
at work and
cool.
I'm with children and we're playing and learning, and I'm like, I get paid to do this. Like, this is wonderful. I love children. I love playing, and it's helping them. So my background is, special education, general education.
Yeah.
And in special education, the push, it's behavior modification is a big, thing because you want to help decrease those disrupting behaviors so that can learn.
Right.
Um,
Right.
but for me, a lot of it was, well, why are these behaviors there? I don't want to just change the behavior. Like, what's going on?
Yeah, get deeper into it because there's always a root to a problem, right?
Yep. And I
Yeah.
remember there was this one child that he was a 3rd grade student, and I was teaching 3rd grade at the time, and we had to get these math scores in, and he had to do his math test like that day. It was very important. But his mom was just put in prison that morning,
Oh wow.
and he was heartbroken. And
3rd
for
grader
me,
and his mom's going into prison.
that's where I knew and he was acting out, and I knew why he was acting out, and I didn't want to change his behavior because his social emotional needs needed to be met. I wanted to fix
Right.
his why. I wanted to help him with why he was acting out, not just change the behavior. And so play therapy, really counseling is, for me, helps to address the why behind why kids are acting out, or why kids are struggling. And play is just the natural language of the child. All children play. Everybody needs to play to be healthy in some form or fashion, even adults. There's actually a lot of research on the impact of play with adolescents and adults. It's highly effective in decreasing those internalizing and externalizing behaviors. So it's the research is fascinating. There's just not enough of it yet, which is where I felt led to do my dissertation in play therapy.
It's really kind of funny to think about that we're talking about research and play, like two things that
Oh.
you would think would be the antithesis of each other, right?
Right? Yeah.
But that comment just made me laugh. That there's not a lot of research on play, but we all know it's good, and there's a benefit to it. Let's talk a little bit about some of the benefits that you've seen as you started to implement some play therapy with the kids that you're working with.
Children, they only have so much language and language processing skills as young children. So when they are struggling with these big feelings on the inside, or even maybe they've experienced something and they've developed a mistaken belief from this experience that we don't know about because they've never verbalized it to us.
Mm-hmm.
But they believe they are bad because they can't sit still in class. That's a mistaken belief.
Yeah.
And so through play, through watching how children approach problems, how they approach tasks or assignments or just what play materials they're drawn to, that can tell you so much into their who they believe they are and why they do the things they do, just through watching what they do.
So let me ask you this. I studied a little bit in college. My initial study was in art, and then I realized I didn't want to tell somebody what to do to create art to get paid for that. So I changed my major. But one of the things that we studied in my major was art therapy.
Yeah.
And so there were tells, there were things that you would find as kids would draw things, the colors they would use, the intensity of the strokes. Are there techniques that you're utilizing to assess and evaluate as kids are going through this play to help you to pick up on these markers that, okay, this kid may have a deeper issue?
100%. And we use a lot of art therapy and play therapy because that's play.
Yeah, so, right.
Yeah. So I discovered Adlerian play therapy a couple years ago. And I was really drawn to her. Play therapy has a lot of different theories or approaches on how to play with the children. I was really drawn to Carrie Cottman's Adlerian play therapy, which was based off of Adlerian therapy, Alfred Adler, the individual psychology, because she really focuses on looking at the whole child and how they interact in their different world systems that they belong to. And as a play therapist, she and it's congruent with Adlerian therapy, but there's 4 phases. So number 1, that relationship is always there. You have to have a very strong relationship. So when you're first playing with students, you have to play with them and develop strong connection. And then the second phase of Adlerian play therapy is you're trying to discover the child's lifestyle. How are they at home? How are they at school? How do they act, in the community? And as you're setting up different play activities that will help explore this child's lifestyle. And that will tell you, once you understand what are this child's goals of misbehavior, like why, may they believe they're the bad kid, so they act like the bad kid, or once you learn what their lifestyle is, then you can develop different play interventions to help re-educate or help correct those mistaken beliefs and give them opportunities to show you're a good kid and this is why. Adlerian teaches everybody needs to feel connection to be successful. Everybody
Okay.
needs to know
Right.
they are capable to
Mm.
be a successful adult. Everybody needs to have courage to take new risks.
Mm.
Everybody needs to know that they count and that they belong. And so as you're watching the children play, it's really easy to see which one of those 4 C's that they don't believe about themselves through how they play.
Okay, so give those C's again. Break that down one more time.
Okay, they're called the 4 C's. You could
Okay.
Google it. It was developed. I forgot her name. It was developed by anyway, not by Adler, but it's a part of Adlerian play therapy.
Okay.
It's
Say Karen Horney.
yes, there's developed by 2 people, and she is one of them. Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the 4 C's,
So everyone needs to know that they count.
they count, so that everybody
Like
matters.
like you
Okay.
are important.
Yeah.
Who you are an important. Everybody needs connection. They
Connection
need
with
to know
other
they're
people.
not alone. They have people. So when kids are playing, they don't interact with the kids. You realize that they're the ones who
Yeah.
need connection. Everybody needs to have courage to take risks, courage to try new things, and capable. They need to know they're capable.
Okay. Wow. What an interesting breakdown. Because as you're talking about this with kids, this is I mean, we don't change as adults in relation to these needs, right? I mean, it's important for all of us to feel these things.
It's funny because it works. I feel like sometimes I know too much because I will totally do this with my husband. I have analyzed which crucial C he's missing because it helps me to interact with him.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Does he ever look at you and say, "Stop analyzing me"?
all the time? Yes. I sent him to the grocery store and asked for a can of tomatoes for something, a recipe I was making, and he, I believe, came home with like stewed tomatoes.
Okay. All right.
And so I knew that his capable could be a little struggle sometimes. So in talking to him, I knew that I needed to build up his capable in order to avoid a conflict. So I said, you made him. You are a very smart and important man. You accidentally got the wrong type of tomatoes, and you're still a very important and smart man.
I love it.
And he just rolls his eyes. He's like, "Stop it."
So in a few months, he's going to look at you once you have your PhD and say, "Dr. Owen, take the PhD hat off." My wife,
he said that a long time ago.
Yeah, I used to teach a lot of leadership and coaching, and traveled around doing that quite a bit. And there were times where my wife and I would be in a conversation, and she looked at me, and she's like, "Stop coaching me."
That's awesome.
Sorry, we're just in that mode. I'm fascinated. As we talked about in our pre-show and in the introduction, Miles introduced me to this phrase that I absolutely love. I have stolen it. I have adopted it. This idea of playing around with something, playing around with an idea. And oftentimes over the years, I'll hear him say, "Yeah, I'm playing with this idea right now." So that could mean that he's studying something, he's reading something, he's experimenting with something. It might be music that he's playing with, whatever it is. But I love that idea. And I think as adults, we get far too away, we distance ourselves from play because we want to always be right, or we want to have this, we think we're quote unquote adults, and so we're not supposed to make mistakes, or whatever this crazy belief is that we may be carrying on to. But we get away from play far too often.
It's funny. It came from years of reading self-help books and not getting any help.
Yeah, there you go.
So, because I realized, and this is I wrote about this in one of my journals. The self-help industry is like a drug, and you read the book, and when you read the book, it's like taking a drug. You're getting high, but the minute you finish the book, you start to go through withdrawal. So you're waiting for the next great title.
That's
And I realized it's like, wait a
Next
minute.
great theory, the next thing that's just
Yeah,
going to make
I'm not
all the
playing with
difference.
any of these ideas.
Yeah,
And so I'd come up
yeah.
with this theory that when you read a self-help book, the first thing that you come across that resonates in you, you underline it, you put it on an index card, you close the book, you put the card in front of you, and you go, how do I live this? How does this thing I just read affect my relationship with my son? How does it reflect relationship with me? How do I walk around when I'm going shopping with this idea in my head because I want this idea to become me? And then I
Mm.
would start writing about it. And that just, it was a cascade effect with everything. And I used to tell everybody my worst sense is my sense of smell.
Mm.
And I would tell everybody for years, oh, I can't smell, I can't smell. And then one day I looked up after doing this thing with the self help books, I realized, why don't you just practice goddamn smelling? So I bought all of the oils. I went out and got all of the seasonings and I just started sniffing, just sniffing and sniffing, making a conscious effort to smell because we don't, we never practice our senses. And Steve, you'll appreciate this. David Huberman,
Yeah,
David Huberman
Huberman's.
talks about,
Are
he
you talking
talks
about
about
Andrew? Andrew Huberman
Andrew, I'm sorry,
on his
Andrew Huberman
podcast?
talks
Yeah,
about
yeah,
practicing seeing,
yeah.
practicing visual acuity to go out, relax your eyes, look at things far away,
Right,
look at things
right.
close.
Yep,
And we don't practice our senses.
yeah.
yeah.
So that's where all of this came from. A lot of it came from just playing, this sounds weird, but playing with myself.
So, wow, we're going to jump off of that topic.
No, just keep it in context
Thank
and
you.
see how your little mind just wandered off into the bush.
And so did every one of our listeners. Kelly, talk about how, as you studied this play therapy for kids, how has that changed your life? Aside from coaching your husband and being the PhD to him, but what's it done for you?
Um, it really kind of ties in a little bit to what Miles was just saying. It has completely changed how I see children
Mm,
and how I interact with them. As educators, we're taught, do this activity, do this assignment, see how the kids did, and you analyze the end result. Play therapy, it's really not about the activity, but it's about watching how they approach and accomplish the activity that you are going to get your most valuable information and
Wow.
not the end result. It's the
okay.
process where you
Yeah.
will learn how to best help the child. So really that has changed. I see how kids do things differently and how they interact and just everything. I just see them differently.
What a great lesson for adults too, because I mean, part of the purpose of the Evolve podcast is to give people tips and ideas that they can actually go out there and test and play with. And I love what you're talking about, that it's the process. And far too often we get away from the process. We think about the goal and we have to accomplish that goal. And oh, I haven't accomplished this, but somebody else has, and so maybe my life isn't as good as theirs. But it's the process that brings the passion. It's the process that brings the happiness. It's the process that brings the fulfillment.
Absolutely. It's funny because I am a self-help book junkie too.
Mm-hmm.
Although I've eventually, because I am so tired, I've had to totally find books that are fiction and not, I just need to take a break from helping anybody. But one of the self-help books that I really loved was Atomic Habits.
Yes,
Yeah.
one of my
And
favorites.
I
I love
actually, it's
James
funny
Clear.
that you were saying you had to stop and write it down because I had to do the same thing with this book, Miles. I had to write, and I
Yeah.
have a running list on my phone still that I keep checking back into. But he talked about when you enjoy the process of something, the end result, it's written by James Clear. The end result will just come.
Yeah.
And I have found that to be
Yeah.
true in my running. When I enjoy just being outside in the morning in the fresh air and just the process of running with my friends and that process, we don't realize how fast we're going until the end. The results just
Yeah,
come.
right.
And it's been the same with me being in school. I love being in the learning environment. The process of being in class and like interacting and learning and taking notes, that process is fun. Um, and the
And
results
Steve is
just,
gonna love this. Steve is gonna love when I say this. The process is what puts you in flow.
Yeah, yeah. It
You
really
you get
is.
more flow experiences when you concentrate on the process. And as Steve Kotler said, I think he calls it the acronym REST was effortlessness. Well, I'll screw it up, but effortlessness, timelessness, and there's two other ones that are part of the process, which takes you out of thinking about what you're doing. It takes you out of thinking about the end results.
Yeah,
Where as a runner, it's one step after the other. You pay attention to that. You pay attention to your heartbeat. If you got company, the landscape, and the
yeah,
next thing you know, you
yeah.
look up and you go, "I just ran 100 miles."
that's never happened to me.
Yeah, like what are you talking about? 100 miles. But you're right. It's enjoying and getting involved and engrossed in that process is, and when we play with things, it's so enjoyable and so
Yeah.
self-satisfying, and it's a thing that becomes satisfying in and of itself. Well, Kelly, I know we're coming up on our time, and appreciate you joining us and giving us some time today. But before we go into the tail end of our and go into the rapid fire questions, I need to hear the story about how you came up with the title of your Instagram profile. Because that was originally how I found you. I had this thing
Oh,
pop up on
yeah.
my Instagram that was like "Counselor on the Run." That's a what a cool name. Who is this person? And that's how we initially got connected. Was that name stood out to me. So how did you come up with this idea of "Counselor on the Run"?
It came to me in the shower.
Okay, I
All
love
good
that.
things come to me in the shower. I just have the best
Absolutely, I'm the
thoughts come
same
to me in
way.
the shower.
Yeah.
Because I'm always on the go. We're so busy. And
Yep.
I'm a counselor and I love to run. I think that was like somebody was like, "You are always on the run." I'm like, literally. I'm like, "Oh,
Mm.
I'm a counselor." It just came to me in the shower. I think I'm like, I should change my Instagram to that
What
because
a
it really
cool
does
name.
describe me to a T.
Yeah, you're a counselor. You help people. You're always running and going with all the responsibilities you have. And what time do you get up in the morning to go running with your friends?
When I run at home with my husband a lot. He's also a runner.
Okay.
We wake up about 4:30, between 4:30 and 4:50, depending on where we're running.
Mm.
So that means, yeah, and you get used to it.
Yeah, yeah. I'm like you. I once 4:30 hits and my alarm goes off, I'm flying out of bed.
It was hard at first. That's where that James
Yeah.
book really came in handy to
Yep.
like prime your environment. But
Right.
you
Right.
do get used to it. Yeah.
Yeah, you get used to it pretty quick. It took less than 2 weeks for me to adapt.
Yeah.
And I actually employed some of the stuff that Clear talks about in his book, where I started at 4:45, and then I went
Okay.
to 4:40, and then I went to 4:35, and then I went to 4:30, and I finally said, okay, that's the point where I
That's
feel the best. It's
where you're
4:30.
official. Okay. That's
Yeah.
funny because I used to think I would never wake up at 4:45 to go running. Those people are crazy.
Yep.
And then I
Yep.
became one of those people. And then now they're like, well, let's meet at like 4:20. I'm like, okay. And then they're like, hey, can you do 4? I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
But it never seems
Oftentimes we
crazy when I'm
become
doing
what
it.
yeah, it doesn't seem crazy, but we become what we think we won't,
And that's
just out
funny
of
because
necessity.
that's when I'm going to bed.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Well, because so when my son was first born, my wife at the time and I we figured out where we are the best in terms of in terms of being alone.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I used to love putting my son to bed, and then she would go to bed and I would be up.
Yeah.
And there's something about like at night I can hear the silence. And then I live in a place where, I'll go out the back of the apartment complex and it's just a wooded area. So it's just quiet. Sometimes I'll see deer creeping along, but
That's
there's
your
something
perfect
about,
creative time for you. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's just something about 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning of being alone with playing with ideas like what I was talking about, music, food, whatever. So I usually end up going to bed at 4. And then when I get up in the mornings, usually at 9 or 10, I'm just frazzled. Like,
Yeah.
So we're gonna start a chat here that when Kelly's waking up, when I'm waking up, and you're going to bed, it's like good morning, good night, right?
Right. Good morning, good night.
Yeah.
good morning, good night.
Well, Kelly, let's jump in to our rapid fire round.
Okay.
I want to ask you a few questions, and the way that we do the rapid fire is we want one word or one answer
Okay.
to the rapid fire questions. You ready to go?
Okay, fun. Yes.
All right, so let's talk disruption. How have you disrupted your life to spark new growth?
I have to say that in one word.
One word or one phrase, one sentence.
Going back to school.
I was
Awesome.
thinking that.
Okay.
I was like, and so all we've talked about is her disruption.
Yeah. As you've evolved over the years, what is something that you used to believe that you no longer do?
I can be a good mom and follow my dreams.
Beautiful. What are you playing with right now?
Figuratively.
Yeah. Well, unless you have something in your hands that we don't see, but what's
No.
an idea, something that you're playing with?
Stephen Miles.
There you go.
Oh my God. How to trust the process.
Ooh, beautiful. Last question in the rapid fire. We never really stop evolving. What do you do to show yourself compassion along the way?
Watch Netflix.
Very nice. Well, Kelly, this is not part of the rapid fire, so here's our final question for you.
Okay.
You can take your time on this one. At Evolve, we believe that people evolve their lives by stacking one simple habit on top of each other, like we just talked about with James Clear. It doesn't have to be difficult, but just something that's consistent. If you were to give our listeners one bit of advice, what is the most important habit that you would want them to stack and build upon?
Daily gratitude.
Mm. So impactful. It's really interesting that you brought that up. And we were talking earlier about your growth and evolution and how similar in tone and nature that it was to Nicole Johnson, one of our previous guests.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
she said the same thing. Daily gratitude
really
was a
did, yeah.
life changer for her. So I think
Yeah.
We've
got a
actually had
theme
quite
there.
a few. We've had quite a
We
few
have.
people
Yeah.
who bring up gratitude.
I've
Yeah.
used the phrase life changing for my gratitude journal. It really has.
Yeah, it makes a big difference. Well, and on that note, folks, it is time for us to wrap up another Evolve podcast. I want to thank our guest, Kelly Owen, for joining us today, and my co-host, Maya W. Miles Riley. Kelly, what is the best way for people to follow your personal evolution and stay connected with you?
Counselor on the Run on Instagram is where I post my educational journey plus mom hacks, daily life.
Awesome. And I know you're also, we didn't get to this today, but I know that you're passionate about helping other people to have these hacks for eating healthy, for living a healthy life, and balancing or juggling, we should say, all of the responsibilities that they have as a mom. So,
Yeah,
Counselor
it takes
on the
a
Run.
village. So I'm
It
trying
does.
to always share what I've learned.
That's awesome. Well, Kelly, thank you. And hey, remember, folks, that it does take time and consistency to evolve, but first you have to disrupt. And now it's time for you to get out there and evolve.
And evolve.
Thank you for listening to the Evolve Podcast. If you like this episode, share it with your friends. Follow us on Instagram at Evolve_cast and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcasting app. And now it's time for you to get out there and evolve.